Good morning. Happy Wednesday. It's hump day. Do I have a mark there? Oh, it's just hair. So, a gentleman, I'm using that term loosely, who has in the past stated he was an attorney, commented on one of my videos. He has since deleted the comment because, well, I told him I wasn't impressed. But he was arguing with my definition of what a competent attorney was, because all the competent attorneys he knows would never represent someone like DMA, blah, blah, blah. So Randall Scott Newman can't be a competent attorney. And this guy's got 32 years of experience, and he alleges that he's tried, I believe, two DMCA cases. And he didn't know the difference between a complaint and a petition. So, I mean, well, until he was corrected in a previous comment, he didn't understand the difference. It was like, so my best guess is this guy's not an attorney. That's my best guess. Generally speaking, if an attorney is unwilling to identify himself as an attorney, unless he shows an exceeding level of competence in my comments or on my Discord, I generally speaking refuse to believe that they're an attorney. There are a lot of incompetent attorneys out there, don't get me wrong. But the difference is that I wouldn't just accept anybody's word if they're not showing a high level of competence that they're an attorney. So you can't judge the competence of an attorney by their client. Attorneys end up with the clients that they end up with. You don't necessarily turn away a good case because you don't like the client. I have represented a lot of clients that I don't like. You know, just think about every public defender or private defense attorney out there who's had to represent, you know, molesters and rapists and serial killers, etc. I mean, you representing someone who is distasteful to you or to the public at large does not have any impact on your competence. So an attorney suggesting that another attorney isn't competent because of who they represent is just absurd. It's absurd. And to transfer your feelings for opposing party or for the client to the attorney is also absurd. I deal primarily in family law. I mean, I do pretty much anything under the sun, but most of my practice, most of the cases that I get are either contract cases or they're family law. By far and away. And in family law, generally speaking, when you advocate on your client, you get a little vicious and nasty. You take swipes. I never hold it against opposing counsel for taking swipes at me or my client. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, I may find their client distasteful, but, you know, at the end of the day, my job as an attorney means I'm going to have to settle with them, generally speaking. And, you know, it's water off a duck's back. It is what it is. Like, you don't transfer your feelings. So I don't judge competence of an attorney by having them take swipes at me or my client, or by me not liking their client or anything like that. And by the same token, you know, there have been multiple times where I have liked opposing party way more than I liked my client. Just because I could see by being involved in the case that they're the reasonable one, the rational one. They're the one who are doing things, you know, above board, and my client's a piece of shit. But that doesn't change anything. I still advocate for my client. My client being a piece of shit or not, they're entitled to competent representation. They're entitled to have me fight for their interest. That's what they pay me for. That's what my job is. Regardless of whether or not I want the outcome, I fight for the outcome. That's my job. So Randall Scott Newman's job is to fight for his clients. You might not like his clients, but that doesn't make him an incompetent attorney. The only real metric we have a couple metrics. First of all, we could look at his prior employment. He was employed by some fairly high-end law firms. Generally speaking, you have to be a good attorney to get a partner role or even the lead attorney role on a case for one of those high-end law firms. They don't hire schleps, generally speaking. I mean, they might have associates who they're paying peanuts, like $80,000 a year or some nonsense, to work 80 hours a week to do all the grunt work. But the partners and the lead attorneys are all going to be competent, skilled, experienced attorneys. So that's one way you can look. And we know and we can see his background. He's been involved in some fairly high profile cases for some of these law firms, and they would not put an incompetent attorney on a high profile case, generally speaking. Hashtag not all. This is the rule, not a potential exception to the rule. But because he's been on multiple cases for these law firms, you can generally tell that he's not incompetent, or at least his peers have not found him to be incompetent. Another way that you could judge the competence of a person is by the complaints they put out. Do the complaints actually list valid causes of action? Now, I've reviewed 2 of his complaints. By review, I mean I've read. I may not have done streams on them. I read his copyright complaint for DMA, and I read his lawsuit for Chile de Castro, the complaint, both of which are very competent. They're not stellar, but they're competent. They're workmanlike. They are sufficient to the task. That shows competency. On the other hand, I read some, but not all. It was like 86 pages, and I got bored of it because they weren't getting any fucking points. But I read the complaint that the Macrones filed on Candace Owens. And that's a hot, stinking mess of garbage. That's an incompetent complaint. But I say that with a caveat, because they might not have facts. They might not have an actual cause of action. They might be filing this purely to harass Candace Owens, etc. And I'm not saying I like Candace Owens, and I'm not saying I like the Macrones. I'm not saying I dislike either, although I dislike both of them. Just saying. But looking at the complaint, it's not a good complaint. So, and I think it actually can be attacked just on the basis of the complaint. I disagree vehemently with Robert Barnes, who thinks that she's screwed, but Robert Barnes, I think, is a bloated douchebag who has an over-exaggerated sense of self-importance, and he is Dunning-Kruger to the point where he thinks he knows everything about everything. He speaks on politics, economics, sports, every field of law in every state, as if he is the paramount, like, I know, and this is exactly the way it's going to be, and people are going to point their fingers at me, but you just don't listen carefully enough to what I say. But anyway, that complaint is a hot mess. So what do we know about Randall Scott Newman, besides he's boring, irritating, annoying, obnoxious, generally not the kind of person I'd hang out with, given the choice? I mean, he comes into my Discord and irritates the shit out of me, but I mean, there's a lot of people in my Discord who irritate the shit. Most of the people, pretty much everybody in my Discord irritates the shit out of me, at least at some point. But what do we know about him as an attorney? The only thing that we can really judge about him as an attorney are the complaints. That's really all we can judge. His motions aren't great, but they're competent. They're not works of art. You can see that he's more competent than he is a perfectionist. He's more competent than he is in his desire to make sure everything is, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. There have been things in them that have made me go, but they're not things that are like fatal to any of the motions. We have disagreements on the law, but that doesn't mean an attorney is incompetent, because, well, I don't expect him to be an expert on the Hague Convention. I'm certainly not an expert on the Hague Convention. I could be wrong, but also he can be wrong. My biggest issue with him is that he really likes to use AI to summarize cases and to summarize things like the Hague Convention. And I don't think that's very appropriate, because I don't think it gives you a very complete and accurate picture. And oftentimes the AI will either invent things, or they will use sources that aren't competent sources themselves to generate these things. So I disagree with some of his practice styles, but the product that he has produced has been competent. Regardless of my feelings for him, competent. I don't like DMA. I don't really know DMA, to be honest with you. I've never watched any of his content, because I tried to watch a little bit of it and I was bored out of my goddamn mind, one of his live streams. But I think he has a valid cause of action. I think the complaint sets forth a valid cause of action. I think that he has an excellent chance of recovery, assuming that Randall Scott Newman stays competent in his representation and follows this thing through to the end. I don't dislike Chili. I think Chili's an interesting guy. I'd go out to dinner with Chili. I'd even pay, because dude lives in a car, from what I understand. But I'm not a Chili fanboy. I disagree with a lot of things that Chili does, and his understanding of the law is suspect at the best. But the complaint was a well-written complaint, competent. It's not like stellar or anything like that sets forth factual bases for all the allegations. And he, again, assuming that he can prove all of these things, it's a competent complaint. Whether or not he is a good trial attorney, well, that's a different kind of ball of wax. I'm a good trial attorney for family law. I'm a good trial attorney at civil cases. I would probably be a horrible trial attorney for a criminal case, because that's a different animal. But again, most attorneys never do trials. Maybe one or two, but most attorneys don't. It's not, there are certain practices, like an attorney who does unlawful detainers. They'll have a lot of trial experience with unlawful detainers. A criminal defense attorney or a prosecutor will have a lot of trial experience with that. Family law attorneys have quite a bit of trial experience, because there's a lot of, most cases settle, but a lot of cases do go to trial. But personal injury attorneys, probably next to no cases for most personal injury attorneys, because the insurance carrier is going to settle. That's what happens. So judging someone based on their trial experience, that doesn't mean they're competent or incompetent. So anyway, the metrics are important that you use to determine. I got a call. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.